Costa, welcome to Eudaimonia live show today. It's such a joy to have you with us today, especially as we were sharing how we ended up connecting and following each other on social and now finally meeting almost in person. We're close enough, we might meet up for coffee. But while people are joining still, I'd love to introduce our guest. You'll see why I'm so excited. So, Professor Costas Andriopoulos is a curious innovation and entrepreneurship researcher, passionate about teaching and helping leaders make decisions that can improve their lives and those of people around them. He's a professor of innovation and entrepreneurship at Bayes Business School, ex-CAS. He's also the director of Avyssos Advisors Limited, a visionary consultancy that works with companies to anticipate and embrace the future, equipping them with innovative solutions and products to stay ahead of the curve, while actively advising and investing in startups. So that's a common ground that we didn't know we had before. So, whoever is seeing us today, right now, and later, do not hesitate to ask your curious questions, business questions, startup questions at any point in this talk. We will pick them up and we will answer them when the opportunity is right. And for those who don't know me, I am Christina Garidi, Purpose Coach, founder of Eudaimonia Coaching UK, and I'm on a mission to democratize human flourishing. What does that mean? I coach ambitious professionals to decode their purpose and find career alignment. I introduced the Eudaimonia Success Model in 2018 globally as a TEDx speaker, and I am writing my book and struggling most of the times. So it's very nice to be speaking to an author here on how to access the eudaimonic state of mind. And today, we have Costas Andriopoulos, as we said earlier, for those of us who are here. He is the best-selling author of Purposeful Curiosity, one of the most exciting books I've read in 2023 and reread towards the end of it because I had to come up with the questions for this interview today. So I guess it would be fair to introduce how and what this book left for me and then get us into our conversation today. But I think what I really took away from the book was that it really decoupled the stress of having to do something to succeed, to do it for my career. Because coming from a consulting background and the London corporate life as well, I always felt I needed to have a purpose, an aim, and I need to bring it to fruition, to success, to recognition. And this is how we are wired, right? This is perhaps the educational system and so on. And what your book did for me was bring in the playful heart into it, and actually see curiosity as a practice where I can have fun and I can actually, remove all the strings attached and really allow my heart to play with what I'm interested in. And this is exactly what I preach at Eudaimonia. So hence you're here today. So shall we get started? And these are my papers and preparations for the questions. When did you know that you had purposeful curiosity in you, in terms of when did you know you're going to write this book? Like, when did it take shape in your mind?
First of all, it's a pleasure being here today with you. I've seen a lot of the episodes that you have done in the past, and I really enjoyed them and learned a lot from them. So thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. When did I know? First of all, I have to say something. I have been curious forever. And
Surprise.
and a lot of people, like friends and colleagues, actually, when they refer to me, they say that I'm very annoying because I ask a lot of questions despite my age. So what happens is that when we are young, we ask a lot of questions. As we grow older, the questioning attitude or mindset actually drops. And I never suffered from that. So that's why they refer to me as very annoying. But the interesting thing is that when I started this research, which was 6 or 7 years ago, I became curious about curiosity. So curiosity became, for instance, the focus of my research. My research before that is on creativity, innovation in companies. So I've studied companies in the UK, in California, in Boston, in New York. So, and again, when you're studying innovation and creativity, curiosity is linked, right? Because if you're interested about developing something new, you have to read. There is this urge to learn. to get up to date with what is happening. So I started this project knowing nothing about the academic side of curiosity, and there are strong roots in psychology and there are some things in terms of management, but I was curious to learn more. And when I started this project, a lot of my colleagues or my friends were saying, but you know nothing about curiosity. I mean, you are known about something else. It's a career suicide. You are going to waste a lot of time.
Wow.
Have you thought of the opportunity cost? So immediately what I figured out was that when you start something new and when you start learning something new, you're not going to get a lot of support. You're going to get a lot of people who are going to get worried about you. So why are you starting this? And then you're saying, okay, I have been doing the other thing for 20 years and I had some relative success. Now I would like to see, what is happening in another, for instance, arena, in another, for instance, theme or area. So I became very interested about this. Now, I didn't know from the beginning that I will be focusing on curiosity with a purpose. But what I knew was that, and what I experienced myself, and what I see other people, struggling with, is a lot of us are very curious about a lot of different things, but then our curiosity doesn't translate, doesn't convert it to something. When I'm saying it to something like a product or a service or a career progression or something that they are in our lives. So I wanted to see how I can channel my curiosity to develop something. And for me, the product was the book. For me, it was learning more. But in this journey, I was quite lucky because I had the opportunity to interview a lot of people who have channeled their curiosity to achieve, for instance, their goals. And some of them was about reaching a summit. Some of them was about starting a business. Some of them was about career transition. So all of us have something, and a lot of times, life takes over. And we have a project, we have a folder open that we want to learn more about, that we want to research. But, because life takes over, we don't have the time. So what I realized is that I need to change the mindset, which means that I need to stop time at that point and I need to put this as a priority, which means let me learn more about this. So I started contacting people, I started interviewing people, which is what I do in my academic life, and I started to learn more. Of course, in this journey, I had to look at existing literature, which comes from other books, and there are a lot of interesting books in terms of curiosity and asking questions, academic research, YouTube videos, podcasts. So there are a lot of things which are happening, but I was never interested in knowing in advance what the book will be, because then I would lose, for instance, the interest. So I kept it open until last minute. So I was writing, the chapters, and my editor and then my agent were asking me, so what is the book about? And I said, okay, I don't know yet, but at the end, most
You get away
probably,
with it.
yes. And I got away with murder at the end, but yeah, it was a very exciting and interesting process, as you were saying, because you already your book. It's very complicated. It's very emotional. It can be draining because you have some days where there is a flow in terms of your thinking, in terms of your writing, but there are some days that you're struggling. So, but I think this is a natural thing for people who are, first of all, learning something from scratch or from zero, and then they have to put it on in the context of a book.
Wow. And what I hear as you're sharing this is, I'm glad you shared that, after 20 years of being an expert in something, that the world knows you about and your students know you about, suddenly this urge, came, which is about learning about something new. And you didn't have a lot of support, but you did it anyway. And wow, I want to know who said it's career suicide. I can't believe that. And as a coach, I'm like, wait, how did you dare? But look, if you listened to them, you would have never created this and you wouldn't have opened our horizon as to how to manage curiosity in daily life, because this is what you've done, bringing your academic career and putting that on the line, but actually making it so simple for an average person like me to be able to find my steps and my foot, and the rhythm to be able to complete something which doesn't have to be a big thing, a product or something, but actually a project, a curiosity project, as you call it. And you almost described, as I have read the book, trying to prove myself here, the each equation, right, where you
Yeah.
take us through the steps of, how you come across something, then how you commit to it, and then how you actually start seeing the fruits of that commitment day to day. So the next step then is commitment. And once you find your itch, you commit to a curiosity project. And there's a turning point, and I think that's I saw something on one of your stories recently, and I think it was about Marina Abramovich's exhibition, and I was telling you how I got psyched about her, how I researched
Yeah.
everything about her. If I was a guy, I would definitely be accused to be a stalker of some sort. It's like everything about Marina and how we become obsessed. And I love the word you use in your book, psyched, because that comes from a Greek word, psyche. So we literally just fall into a different level of, I need to find out everything at a soul level about this other human being or about this topic, about what this means in the world and to me and to somebody else right now. And I am curious because if you have managed to tame curiosity in the way that you describe in the book, then I'm sure you're birthing something new. So, could you reveal maybe behind the scenes what is coming up for you in the next few years or months? What has caught your curiosity now?
First of all, you're absolutely right, and I think I'm an average normal human being that also gets a lot of distractions. So when I started thinking about the book, I said I can go back in time and I can see people who have done amazing things 40 years ago, 50 years ago. But then I said maybe I can find some interesting stories, but it wouldn't be relevant to today, because what
Mm,
is different today is the distractions that we
mm,
have. We're surrounded by all these lovely machines, that all these lovely devices. There are a lot of interesting things that surround us that cannot leave us alone. And I suffer from that. I struggle from that. I think my colleagues, people who I know, my students. So I wanted to see how people actually do it now with the context that we are talking. So it became a purpose for me. So emotionally, I was attached to this. So I wanted to learn everything about this. As you were saying about Marina Abramovich, that I geeked out about, curiosity. You are geeking out about something else. So the interesting thing is when it becomes a purpose, or for me, what I've seen happening was that all these distractions, the moment that I started, or I declared to the world, I'm interested about researching this, etc., etc. So what happened was all these distractions disappeared. So
oh,
it was me and what I had in front of me, which was, for instance, in my case, curiosity. In your case, maybe something else. So, and the interesting thing, though, was the moment that I submitted the manuscript to my editors. I have to say something. I'm opening parenthesis and I will close it. So I wrote the book before November 2022. And what happened in November 2022? ChatGPT was introduced, right? And a lot of people are asking me, I mean, did you get any help? And I said, no. I researched and I wrote it on my own. So this book was written by a human being, as other books, and it was edited by humans, and hopefully it will be read by humans. And now I'm closing the parenthesis, because I'm getting a lot of very interested about AI, and AI, is affecting creativity, innovation, the publishing world, and everything else. But it became very personal to me. The moment that I submitted the manuscript, all this distraction came back. It became present again. So I started getting seduced. So having something in front of you, which is that you emotionally connect to, it can be a very interesting asset, or ally to have. You are asking me about now. So I've interviewed a lot of people who are doing a career transition. So, for instance, they're moving from one thing to something else. And I'm very interested in things which are not related, right? Because if you're an academic, you can be a consultant. So these things go together. You can be an author.
you say that, but it is actually a difficult transition as well. That one.
Yes, but if you're talking about being I don't know, I had people polar explorers, and now they're investors. I mean, it is very different world. So I'm very interested, or I'm very attracted to people who are doing those kinds of radical transitions in their lives. How they prepare for this, how they communicate all these transitions to people, how they manage to convince people to join them into their new journey. So this is something that I'm thinking at the moment. I haven't started anything yet, but I'm very interested to see, what is happening there.
This is very much up my street. I think I'm going to be a definite reader and buyer of your second book too. I'm
Or
so
I have to interview you
I'm
to tell me
sold.
more about this. Since you have
Oh,
done this in the past and I haven't, then I don't know. Again, I'm starting to get familiar with this literature and with this topic. I need to
mhm.
talk to you.
And
Um,
this is beautiful
so,
because it comes from I'm jumping onto the what you're birthing right now, and as a career coach, this is something I would be, this is my day to day, this is my bread and butter. But actually, coming from an academic like yourself, is going to be such a different perspective, point of view for me to indulge. So I'm really looking forward to it. And I also want to say it's interesting. I also, before I met you officially and before I chatted with you much more, I actually missed you at the London Book Fair last April because you
Mm.
actually had a talk about ChatGPT and how it's changing the publishing world. So you're definitely having your fingers in many, many different pies, and you're explaining because you understand technology and innovation. Of course, it's a very innovative ability for humanity right now, and how this is changing the world. I think, may I say, on the backstages, at least, of the London Book Fair, there was a lot of unpreparedness and a bit of panic about what this means to
Yeah.
the publishing world now that all of this is available for people to, use. So thank you for that. That reminded me. That was another connecting point of our journeys. Um, sorry, you
The
wanted.
first thing, yes, the first thing that happens when you have a new technology
Mm,
being launched or introduced, there are some people who get paralyzed, they get afraid, they get threatened, and there are some people who get energized by this. So I think the important thing here, and this is where curiosity is an ally or a friend. So curiosity has helped me a lot in terms of fears or things that I feel, maybe new threats are coming our way, because I'm saying, okay, let's be calm and let's see, the new questions that we have about this, how they can enable us to do something better. And
mhm,
then the more you use your curiosity, the more you learn about something, the
mm,
fear and the threat actually disappears. So I think the distance keeps us still afraid of the new situation, because the more you learn about something, the more you can see some benefits, the more
mm,
you can see how you can use it on your own benefit. So I think it's important for us to realize, and this is what I'm discussing with my students, that said the people who are going to be afraid are not the people who are moving forward. The people who are embracing, who are curious about this and how it can enable, make them more productive, more creative, better, in their lives, then these are the people who are going to thrive in the future. So I think it's important to have this in mind, that a lot of times the things that we are afraid of can be resolved by becoming more curious about those things. So I can
boom.
I, I can give you an example. So a couple of years ago, it was in the summer, so I wanted to start learning kite surfing, and I've never done this in the past, so I haven't done, for instance, surf, windsurf. So I
Mhm.
was relatively amateur or novice on this one. So before I started my first lesson, I go online. So I go to YouTube to learn a little bit of the terminology, safety, all these kind of things. So the first time that I'm meeting my instructor, who was an amazing instructor, at least I know something. So I went prepared. So I think in life, curiosity can help us to prepare for things which are happening and which are coming.
Wow. Thank you for bringing this into our collective awareness because, the way you describe how you turn your fears and how you actually close the distance between what you fear, what perhaps makes us nervous in life, what we don't know. It's the unpreparedness, and curiosity can be an ally. Because that allows us to close that gap, to come closer to what we have to face as a fear, to realize that actually is a friend. The more we sit next to it, the more we spend time with it. Yeah, that's the way. I guess I resonate so deeply with this because that's the way in which I help also my clients in coaching to sit with their demons, as I say. Demons with E, which is the demonizing side of,
Yeah,
we keep and we suppress certain aspects that we are uncomfortable with, but actually through coaching we sit with our demons together and we turn them into demons with AI, not the AI, the artificial intelligence, but the E. And as I call it, that is our guardians, and the ones that take us down the route that we need to go and honor. So,
yeah,
how beautiful that curiosity is the conduit between our two worlds, but actually how you have found curiosity as a almost meditative practice to deal with your fears and move forward in life. In any situation, such as kite surfing, extreme sports. Professor Costas Andriopoulos is going to become the next kite surfer champion of Greece, I hope.
Uh, no, no, no. I still have a lot of things to do in terms of and learn to improve practice. But this is what keeps you going, because I can see some questions in the chat about this. That
Brilliant
things
question.
things do evolve, but we are also evolving, and I think curiosity keeps you relevant. And this is the important thing. And there are a lot of studies that show that there is a link between longevity and how curiosity is helping us on this, because we are identifying new ways to cope with problems and identifying new ways to cope with problems. Also, creating new connections and
Mm,
talking to new people keeps you relevant, keeps you young, keeps you engaged. And another benefit that curiosity has, especially in the team environment, is that people who are asking questions and people who are answering, and maybe they ask you questions back, they are there, they are present. Like
mm,
the two of us right now, right? I'm here, you are here. I, I don't think that we think of something else. And I think this is important in a relationship, either in a personal relationship, in a professional relationship, for people to understand that the people who are next to them or who are surrounding them are there. So, and if you see all the studies, the thing that they're saying is that there is empathy, that people are asking questions, that people are present, that people are listening.
mm,
And a lot of times, and I'm sure that this happens to all of us, is that we have a colleague, we have a friend who are saying, I'm very interested about this. And then we're saying, okay, yes. And then we carry on doing the other things. Now, recently, I started a new strategy. I said, instead of saying, okay, I said, tell me more about what you're interested. And when you're
Risk.
saying this, and when you're actually saying this, when you're saying, tell me more, these three powerful words, first of all, you learn, but then the other person who is telling all these kind of things that they learn about the particular thing that they're interested about, they feel engaged, they feel satisfied, they feel happy. And in a workplace environment, this can take you a long way, right? Because a lot of us, what we're saying. Yes, great. Is it relevant to what we're doing now? No. Okay, let's focus on this. But if we change the narrative, if we change the mindset, and we're saying, tell me
Mm,
more about this, then we can find that the things that are interesting for other people can actually connect to what we do. So
mm.
taking these opportunities to listen to other people, I think it's a great thing forward.
Yes, and thank you for reminding me. That's one of the tricks and tips that Costas has in his book, and that's landing really beautifully for me, because this curiosity is the lack of assumptions, isn't it? We normally assume things about other people, and this is maybe what changes between our childhood. As you were saying, you were a very curious child, and thankfully you didn't lose that along the way. But most of us, we don't want to be annoying, we don't want to be perhaps coming across too much. Maybe we are too curious and too nosy, however we want to interpret that behavior. But actually what we are doing is we're closing ourselves to more connection, to more presence, to more ability to learn. And I think it's the most famous study about happiness, right? The Harvard
Yeah,
study on longevity as well, where people who have relationships, who can relate, who can remain relevant, and can be present in each other's lives. And this comes from the Japanese well-being, philosophies as well, that I very well know. um, Actually, you can call it all curiosity, and
yeah,
that creates new neural pathways and so on. And we've got, I think, a really beautiful question from Trevor on LinkedIn, where he says, a brilliant topic. Can curiosity ever be satisfied? Especially topics that are evolving. Costas is already, nodding the other side. Or is it
wow.
okay to remain ever curious?
I would recommend for people to remain curious forever, and for these topics maybe to change based on what is happening as people grow older. It's, as I was saying earlier, it's important for us to be relevant, and it's important for us to be up to date with what is happening. And but I have to say something which goes the past. So when I was a child, I come from a very different generation, right? So we had computers that while I was growing older, but you could unscrew the computer. So the screwdriver was my friend, because when you are screwing things, then you can figure out how they work. So I was very interested in how things were working. And in academia, it's the same thing, the same principle. Maybe you don't have a screwdriver, you have something else, but it's about understanding how things do work in organizations. So as a researcher, I spend a lot of time inside companies. I talk to people, I observe people. So I look at that, for instance, their archives, how they communicate with each other in emails, in newsletters, etc., etc. What actually kept me going, and I'm quite grateful, was that my parents continued, despite the fact that some of the things that I was opening or unscrewing, I couldn't put them back in their original state. So I was left with a lot of junk in my room. So and they were coming to me and saying, "Okay, Costas, we are great that you're doing those things, but you have a lot of junk." So despite me being surrounded by all the junk, they never deprived me from continuing to see how things work. So, and I think if I take this forward in an organization, there has to be this element of, it's okay for people to figure out how things work, and sometimes maybe they cannot put them back, but at least they are moving forward. So I think this is something interesting to have. So my answer to Trevor's question was that I don't think that's something that we should stop, and we should, for me, evolution is about having new questions. And because I'm working with a lot of entrepreneurs sometimes get obsessed, or they focus a
Sometimes.
lot on the sometimes like they focus a lot on the product and the solutions. And what I'm saying, change your mindset. Don't focus so much on the solution or your product. Focus on the next question. I think it's important to focus on the next question. So what will be the next thing that your users, your customers, or your clients, if it's B2B, will be looking for? So get obsessed with the next question.
Whew. Okay, well, these are lessons for life, and we do have another question that has just come up from LinkedIn. I cannot unfortunately see the name, so name yourselves if you want. But it says fantastic book, Costa. So they have read it,
Thank
which
you.
is beautiful, and a very important subject to explore. In the recent years, we are observing macro trends like economic uncertainty, overheated real estate market, wars, and others. It shifts the focus of the public to those priority issues. How would you inspire people to cultivate the exploration of curiosity when so many major themes are unfolding simultaneously?
Oh my God, that's a fantastic question, and super complex and challenging. Great question, but very difficult to answer. I have to. This is a disclaimer from my side, but I'll try to make some progress here.
Thank you,
We
Norbert.
can we cannot be experts in everything. It's impossible.
We
Okay,
don't.
maybe we don't have to, or maybe technology can help us. That's why I always believe in the combination between technology and humans in terms of moving forward. So we have to focus on something that we feel it's important and will move the needle. So when we're talking about this, then the thing that we have to focus is, what do I need to research or make progress that I feel will move the needle? And this is where I have to start with. That's the first thing. The second thing is that I believe a lot in teams. And so we can be curious about different things in the team that we are operating in, and then collectively bring our curiosity back to those meetings that we have. So maybe somebody can focus on, for instance, macro, maybe somebody can focus, for instance, on real estate, somebody can focus on something else. And then this can be their curiosity projects, bring them back, and then collectively see how we can move, for instance, this collective needle together. This is my quick response to the question. That
That's a
I think I
wonderful.
know. I think I know Norbert. Yes, who is asking.
Okay. Um, Thank you, Norbert, for the question. You definitely put in the spotlight a very difficult, and this shows the complexity. And curiosity is the answer to that, because my next question was going to be exactly on this topic. When I was reading the book, I have to admit, I fell in love with the antithetical concept that Costas brought to my awareness. I didn't know about this. It's called disciplined serendipity. And, I was really curious to find out how he perceived that. How did it help you practice your curiosity projects? And I think that's quite relevant to Norbert's question, because what I heard you say there was, look, the puzzle is complex. The puzzle can be big. It could be a holistic picture that none of us alone are experts on everything. However, the team can work, and purpose, you know, it sounds like I'm putting it as a cherry on top, but actually that's why your book is called Purposeful Curiosity, because curiosity can be a scattergun. Actually,
Yeah.
you're not suggesting that. So discipline, serendipity, but actually purpose that keeps, the context together, a very tight ship for us curious explorers out there in business and in entrepreneurship and in the wider world. How did you practice discipline, serendipity in a world of curiosity with purpose?
Uh, Again, that's a great question, and again, that's a challenging question, but I give it a shot. I think it's nice to create some guardrails and
Mm-hmm.
then to be flexible within those guardrails. So, for instance, I'm creating a list of topics, and then I will be open-minded for these topics to be further explored by the people who I'm interviewing, the things that I'm reading, which may be a book, a magazine article, it may be a blog, and then this will take me to something else. However, we have to manage this something else because it's very easy for us to get seduced by this something else. And if we get seduced by this something else, we may end up, after 8 hours on another topic and not make progress on the actual topic that we have in front of us. So the exploration bit, it's great, but it has to be controlled. So a lot of times what I'm doing is that I'm saying to myself, okay, now you have to focus on what you have in front of you. So create a list of things and then go to, for instance, to the market and see, what is happening, talk to people and be flexible. That's one thing.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I leave some time for me to go wild, which means I say, okay, for the next hour, you can search things that maybe they're not closely linked to what you're doing, but maybe they can help you, educate you, enrich, your mindset. But I put a timer because I know that if I start, at least this is what works for me. I know that if I don't put the timer, it can go for the whole night or the whole morning. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to bring it back. So having some guardrails,
Mm-hmm.
some boundaries to work, I think it always helps. But sometimes we have to move beyond those boundaries and see what is happening.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we have to, in a way, tame this as well. So it cannot go forever. So what I'm saying is frivolous curiosity is not bad. Doing this excessively is bad. So if we are on TikTok, YouTube, on the internet for 10 hours and then nothing actually happens, then that's bad. But it's nice to get sometimes ideas that we wouldn't normally get from the things that we read or the people who surround us. So sometimes what I'm doing is that I see one view, and then what I'm doing is I'm trying to see what is the opposite view.
Mm-hmm.
So what people who are not from that camp, that group, are saying. And so I'm very conscious about this because when you do research, similar things will come back over and over and over again. So we call this in academic terms data saturation, that you're hearing the same thing. So when you're hearing the same thing, you have to stop. But another thing is if I touch another group or if I open, for instance, the opportunity to talk to somebody else who doesn't have the same view. So, for instance, there is a dark side in curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
Curiosity can lead to stalking. It can take you forever to get something. You can get sidetracked. So I'm interested also in those kind of things, and this can lead you to, and I think this is important, to enrich, to expand, or give you a very different view. But it has to be contained. So when I'm talking about discipline serendipity, it's more about guardrails, it's more about time, but also sometimes it's about allowing ourselves or let's say encouraging ourselves to go to places that normally we wouldn't go.
And go. Yeah. I love that, and I think you've given it so much more depth than I hoped for here. And it's the concept also that resonates with me, which is the eudaimonic yin and yang. That we need
Yeah,
to have the light and we need to have the dark, and it's not about having one narrative, it's about being able to entertain the opposite side. And that is so important for many other reasons that we will not go into here in our conversation, in understanding intolerance and be able to,
Yeah.
iron out and harmonize our differences, cultures, political views, and so on. But I think, it is an essential area that we need to encourage, as you said, towards the end, within us, to go wild and to go on the other side and to go off piste, but be able to curb that after we have set strong guardrails, perhaps ask other team members to keep us accountable, and be able to bring the fruit from our explorations in the forest and on the dark side. I love that. Thank you so much.
You
Um,
said you said something interesting, which is the off piste. And
mm,
I'm always saying this because I see some people in the chat whom I know, and I'm always saying, if it's digital, then it's accessible by all of us, and it means that I won't get the competitive advantage that I want, right, or that I would like. So a lot
mm,
of times, what I'm doing is that I'm taking advantage of the analog world.
ah,
I'm taking advantage of resources that are not digitized, because
mm,
I know that a lot of people will not make the extra effort.
mm,
And if I make the extra effort, I will have something that maybe nobody or very few people will have. So
mm,
again, this will give me a competitive advantage. So a lot of times, for instance, when I'm walking, I'm not, for instance, using my device. I look around the
mm,
environment, people, whether they are listening to something, whether they are reading something, how they are dressed. So you can learn a lot by observing. So observation is a skill that we have to develop, right? And because there is a question about it, should curiosity be a course in a business school? I think it should. Yes, it's like creativity, curiosity, creativity, innovation. This is like a muscle that we have to exercise, and the more we exercise something, the better we become.
mm,
And a lot of times we have to give people the opportunity to exercise their research skills, their learning skills, the observation skills, the interviewing skills, because curiosity is about having a conversation. And this is something that you can teach in a school. I don't want to say in a business school, but in a university or even in primary schools, right?
You
So
can
I
teach
think,
people. It's got
yes,
amazing. I mean, as a coach, I wish I knew this before I became a coach. I had to kind of learn it the hard way. Absolutely. I love what you said there. And I want to link it to what you said a few questions before. Um, Thank you. Was it Tamer El Tonsi? Absolutely. I think curiosity should be taught because it is a skill, as Dr. Costa said here, it's a muscle. And going back to a few sentences before, it's really what helps us remain relevant. Because if we cannot learn from where we are being present, our environment, being able to observe, asking those questions to whom it matters, and to actually be able to make those links to the topics that matter to us and be able to create those connections, then I don't know how we will remain relevant in a world of AI and in a world
yeah,
where all of this technology is moving much faster than we can possibly become. But making those connections and going off piste where people will go less will give us the competitive advantage. And I think that's really landing for me from our conversation today. Absolutely need to learn curiosity. And this book is the best way, I think, to start with the baby steps, but also Costas has put some amazing stories and interviews from people from different walks of life, very different backgrounds, and not just business, by the way. It was really interesting to read about explorers and about, researchers, biomedical researchers as well. Trevor speaks Japanese as well, I can see here. So yes, thank you so much for mentioning that, and building on the question from LinkedIn as well. Trevor says, "Domo arigato, Christina-san. I'm inspired to now try kite surfing." There you go, impact created. Thank you very much, Mohammed.
immediately.
Mohammed Salah, you may know him. He says, "It is great to see you, Costa. I hope to meet soon. In your research and interviews, what was the most surprising or unexpected way someone's curiosity led to their achievement?" Hmm.
Yes. For instance, I interviewed a lot of people who are into space exploration.
Yes.
And space is it's something very interesting, at least for a lot of people. And it's interesting to me, for me. And I'm not talking about colonizing Mars. I'm talking about lower orbit satellites. We depend on satellites. And when I interviewed, for instance, the founder of Rocket Lab, they have a very different model. So their rockets are smaller. They 3D print a lot of components of the rockets. They want to send more rockets to lower orbit, with putting more satellites through these rockets. So the business model is very different. So a lot of people focus on the rocket. And if you're curious and you want to send more rockets that have satellites to lower orbit, then you have to figure out another business model. So their curiosity actually made them find a location on our planet that is very quiet in terms of air traffic. So if you go to the US, then you have to wait for weeks or months to actually launch a rocket that has these satellites. But they found a place in New Zealand where the air traffic is very low, and regulators are very happy to work with them, where they could launch a rocket, if they wish, every 72 hours. So
What?
this gives them immediately a competitive advantage. So I have to wait for weeks or months, but I can launch a rocket here in 72 hours if I want, right? So this is very surprising in terms of how curiosity can give you a competitive edge against your competitors. So these people are not sticking, for instance, to the rocket. They're also going, okay, in this planet, where can we launch rockets?
And learn
So
fast
these are the
the result.
yes, and learn faster. Absolutely, because when you, for instance, if you are here or in the US and you have a rocket that you want to send to lower orbit that has the satellites, and then it goes poof, then you have to wait for another week or another month. But if you have to, so you're not learning in a way what went wrong. But if it's every 72 hours, you learn faster. And of course, the business model is that since I have the rockets, and hopefully parts of the rockets will come back to me, not so much damaged, or not damaged at all, then I can do this, more frequently, which means, the prices of sending these rockets and putting those satellites on lower orbit will go down. So this is the thinking behind using curiosity. So you are asking interesting questions.
Yeah. And that nicely moves us on to failure. Learning faster and having failures, which is a common theme in the startup world. And I can tell you, starting Evdaimonia Coaching was my first business. So I don't think I need to tell you enough all the things I had to learn that I was not prepared to learn. And definitely business school didn't teach me back then. You have a beautiful section in your book that was really inspiring for me, actually. And it was slightly different to the common narrative that I have heard from the startup world about failure and fail faster and fail, do it. And, it's kind of macho in a way. But I actually like the distinction that you made between physical preparation, and I liked as a Peloponnese woman over here, about the Spartan warrior mentality. But it's not just the physical side, right? It's the mental side as well.
Yep.
And you talked about, the preparation that it takes to handle failure, and I think you already flirted with that in 2-3 questions ago about how curiosity can help us with fear. But I'd be really interested to hear it from someone who sees a lot of startups, who advises a lot of business leaders across the globe, gets invited to keynote speeches and conferences to talk exactly about that. And how have you, with your a magic card of curiosity, turn these hardcore leaders around? Because failure can cost a lot of money as well, yeah, especially in bigger corporations who are much less risk tolerant, right? So over to you.
First of all, again, failure is part of trying something new. It's inherent. When we're trying something new, the possibility or the likelihood of failing is high. So we have to accept that failure is part of the journey. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, failure is not learning from mistakes, right? So I'm not talking about this kind of failure. So if you're not learning from the mistakes, then you have failed. So significantly, because a lot of times in corporations, they lose a lot of money, not from the first failure, but from not learning from the first failure. So the first thing is that we have to learn that this failure is part of it. The second thing is, failure or not achieving, not making progress, not reaching the goal, it makes us pause, and it helps us to revise assumptions, to dig deeper into why things don't work. And a lot of times we learn from failure. Sometimes we don't learn from success. Success doesn't teach us a lot of things, right? So success tells us, yes, you're good, pat on the shoulder, carry on, right? But
Yeah.
when you're failing, you're saying, okay, oh my God, there is something wrong that I'm doing. So I need to pause, I need to stop.
It's a
And I need
wake.
to figure out, sorry.
It's a wake-up call. It's like a slap, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like, hey,
yeah,
wake up.
it,
It's not working. It's costing you money.
exactly. Exactly, and I think if you fail early or faster, and you take some time to figure out why this thing has happened, then you can make progress. But a lot of people who I talk to, they were saying that you learn from failure because it makes you stop, pause, and again, for instance, challenge your assumptions. So I think it's important to have this in mind. You learn from this.
Hmm.
For me, the problematic thing is to repeat mistakes. So this is where there is no excuse, right? Because
Yeah.
if you're repeating the same mistakes, it means that maybe you're not curious to learn more about your failures or mistakes. So I think it's important for us to know this. What COVID has taught us is that we have to be comfortable with discomfort.
Ah.
And one thing that makes us not very comfortable is failure, because
Mm.
failure is emotional, failure is personal, failure has owners, right? So
Mm.
I failed, right? So there is ownership. It has
Yeah.
my signature, it has my name, right? Or it has our name. So when I started this project, then I wanted to interview some people, then I started emailing people. And if we're honest, my name is Greek, my accent is very exotic. It's not like
I
I'm
love it.
sending an email or I'm calling, from, an Ivy League university or a business school. So there are some things that you have to do to convince people to, for instance, share some time with you.
Mhm.
So when you send an email, it goes into a highway of emails that these people or these teams are getting. So I said, I'm not getting the response that I would like. I need to figure out another way. So in a way, I was not reaching the goal. I was failing. So I said, what is the another way that I can talk to these people so that I can get them interested in
Mhm.
talking to me? So I said, I need
Do
to make those. Sorry.
what did you do? What did you do? I'm curious now.
Yes. So I said, first of all, you have to create a message which is convincing, influencing them that they have it's okay to spend an hour with me, right? So I make those letters more personalized. So I've done more research,
Mm-hmm.
and I've tried to link what they have done with my project. So that was the first thing. So all these things were taking longer to be
Hmm.
done, right? So the email was not cold, the email was not impersonal. It was a very personal thing. Then the next thing I said is I'm going to send them letters,
Oh,
physical letters, which means
analog.
letters analog again. So letters on a letterhead paper with my signature and blah blah blah. So this is an interesting thing. A lot of these people do not receive letters anymore. So they receive a lot of emails, as I was saying, hundreds or thousands of emails. But in terms of that medium or that way of communicating, they receive very few. So immediately I was creating an opportunity for me to talk to them. Immediately, people were getting a little bit curious about who is this person that sends letters, who is this person that is, for instance, putting some paper on an envelope and post it to me, and what is inside. So immediately you intrigue them. Immediately there is this curiosity being developed to the
Wow.
point to the point that I had a couple of people, not a lot of people, saying that I wanted to meet you because I wanted to figure out who still sends letters. So
Way.
and of course, I mean, you feel that this works, but
Mm.
sometimes things do not work, and so I was comfortable with that. So instead of me, for instance, I don't know, getting paralyzed or punishing myself, so I said, okay, so what is the other way? So curiosity and going to the unknown, if I'm allowed to use that word, because I know this word has comes with, for instance, with some weight, comes with experimentation, and experimentation may lead to failure. So we have to become comfortable with discomfort. If something doesn't work, we need to try something else.
Thank you. And it's almost like for me, you have linked forever now failure, which has been a very emotionally charged word, at
Yes.
least in as long as I was working. That was something that, we heard about these other companies that are doing experiments and, but it wasn't our company. We weren't going to do it because we had to succeed. We had clients, we had to appear good, we had to deliver, value for money. And I wish somebody has given me all these examples and personal examples as well to say failure is something you can turn around
Yeah.
if you are curious, if you can ask the questions, if you can try something different, if it's just an experimentation, it's just one outcome of a series of experiments you will do on the topic.
Yeah.
And we've got a beautiful question here from Tamer, and I'm learning to show it. Can I show it? Does it appear? Yes. To
Yeah.
what extent being an expert in a specific subject affects curiosity? What is your comment on the proverb? If your only tool is a hammer, then every problem looks like a nail. Wow,
Yeah.
what an interesting question here. Because the more you become an expert, I guess, the less room for curiosity maybe there is. Or is there?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you could end up into this trap, right? But this is not the advisable or recommended or suggested thing to do. The suggested thing is to carry on, to get more curious about new questions. How Because our world, whether we like it or not, changes, and it changes drastically and quickly. So for me, people who are going to thrive, people who are going to be successful, because I'm trying to combine the question that Tunes is also asking, is
Yeah.
the people who are coming with new questions. And of course, what you see is a nail, but then maybe there are new, interesting, shiny nails that will develop new questions. So, and for me, curiosity, it's not for the sake of it. It's about having a particular goal. So it's about making progress. As I was saying earlier, it's about making people talk to me. That this is an example that I use, or learning more about something. And if we would like to be successful, we have to become curious about how our world is evolving. So, for instance, when I teach entrepreneurship now, and my students will actually tell you this, is that especially when they're proposing new opportunities, I say, okay, you have to tell me how you're going to use AI. So, in a way, I would like my students to start considering AI as an ally, as a friend, as an enabler. And
Mm-hmm.
again, I go back to this: which are the questions that we need to ask ourselves in business, in life, about the future, about our communities?
Hmm.
So there are a lot of interesting questions. We have a lot of data, loads of data. What we are missing at the moment is interesting questions. So I think it's our responsibility to spend more time focusing on generating those questions. And for us who are playing with the new technology like AI, ChatGPT, and new things. So for the last week, I'm playing with a new AI thing, which is called Perplexity, and it gives you answers to questions, right? And we have to figure out which are the good questions to ask, because questioning is important. So, for instance, a question that I like but also find very frustrating to answer is, "What is your favorite book or movie or I don't know, song or music band, whatever?" It takes a lot of time to answer those questions, because I've read a lot of books, as all of you guys. I've seen a lot of movies because I love movies. So it's very difficult, for instance, to answer that question. But if we change the framing of the question, if you say, which is the book that you have gifted the most, then immediately something that which is very broad, how many books, or from the books that you have read, to the books that you have gifted, immediately goes from very broad, which takes a lot of time, to something which is narrow, which takes less time. So I remember the books that I have given, that I gifted the most. And of course, it's not my book, right? It's
Well, I think that
somebody else.
changed.
It's somebody else's book, which I loved and read. But the questioning is what will keep us at the forefront, at the cutting edge, or successful in what we do.
Thank you. And thank you for Tunk Tatlici for connecting curiosity and success. And what I'm hearing beautifully, I'm seeing it as an image right now in front of me, is that once you become an expert, there's always questions on the edge. What you were saying earlier about focus on the next question. And, AI is good at answering questions, but actually, who's going to ask a question? Perhaps AI can help us ask better questions in the future. But at the moment, this remains a human advantage to be able to ask better questions that makes different connections in our minds and in our hearts and with other people. And that lovingly, I think, and beautifully brings us to the last question I wanted to ask, which is reaching the summit, because you beautifully in your book have laid the stages of how a curiosity project from spark to taming that little demon that wants to take us astray, really, and bringing it back and on purpose and on track. When we are in a place where we are completing the curiosity project, the love affair that we have been involved probably for months or years, and with entrepreneurs, like they end up being serial entrepreneurs for a
Yeah.
reason. There can be an anticlimax, you say in your book, and I have definitely felt that. It's like I was saying to my book coach the other day that I don't want to finish the book because I don't know if I do finish it, then I don't know what I'm going to do next. And he's like, all right, so this is exactly it. And I was reading it in your book and I was like, that's exactly my problem. I don't want to finish my book because then I'm going to have to start another book. Well, no. So how do you rekindle the fire? You were telling us earlier what you are birthing in the next few months and years, but how do you rekindle the fire to move on? Because that is a process in itself, I believe. And as a coach, I know that intimately.
That's a great question. Firstly, a lot of times when you talk to people, and as I was saying, I'm talking to people when I do research, there are a lot of interesting things that people tell you. But because you're focusing on a particular thing, you have to limit yourself to that thing that you have in front of you. Then what happens is that, and this is what I'm always doing, whenever I hear something interesting, then I have like a note, for instance, thing where I'm saying, this is for the future. So like a back burner of ideas. So and this list is becoming bigger and bigger and bigger as you're progressing with your project. So this is what I call is like a hyperlink. You are in one side, it takes you to another side, it takes you to another side. So when you are done or before you are done, then you start revisiting this list and you're saying, okay, so what can I do next in terms of keeping this spirit, this energy alive, right? Or high, because otherwise it can go from high to very low. Because it happened to me when I, for instance, finished with the book, because I gave this book to my editor, and then we have, for instance, this is what happens from the editors work with you. They tell you what you have to fix, and they have some ideas. But then from that until it gets published, there is like this quiet time.
Yeah,
Nothing happens, right? Yes. So it's like a thing that a liminal space, a time that nothing happens. And this is the time in order to keep your interest alive and the energy high and the spirit high, to go back to the list and say, okay, what are the other things that I could research now? So what are the other things that I can start getting more curious about? Because you cannot do everything. If I'm honest with you, I suffered from that in the past because I have a lot of interest. I like music, I like architecture and design, I like movies, as I was saying, but you cannot do everything. So while I was finishing the book, I had this as a thing to learn more about. I was interested to develop a documentary based on the book, maybe to follow people in their curiosity journeys or in their curiosity projects, from the beginning to the end, which is something that I'm still interested in doing, and I'm learning more. So you need to have something next to keep you over there, because otherwise, yes, a lot of times, you have expectations that the world will be changing and everybody will be very happy and you are contributing to that. But in reality, it's quiet. And, these things do not happen at the time that you want. So that's one thing. The other thing that happens, and I'm quite lucky, graceful, and blessed, is I'm surrounded by students. Students give you a lot of things to think about. So when you're having a lot of conversations with them in the class, then they may tell you, but have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? So I'm blessed that I'm surrounded by very intelligent people, very curious people, and very, very different people. And then it's up to us to continue being open-minded
Mhm.
and have our antennas on and listen to those kind of things.
Mhm.
So to me, this is what keeps me interested. That, and this is what I'm cultivating. I like having those relationships with my students, with my colleagues, with my, for instance, network, and this network changes, is expanding a lot of times, or is changing, because it keeps your commitment, your motivation, and your interest alive in the things that you want to do.
Wow. That is huge, because what I'm hearing and what's really, popping in my head right now is that it's not just our questions that need to be
Mm.
curious, which was, what we talked about a moment ago, but actually being able to hear the questions from the others and connect the dots, which is probably even more important, being able to receive with our antennas. This is also curiosity. Curiosity is around us to tap into. We don't have to necessarily just be the only source of curiosity
Yeah.
and generating it. And that really takes off the steam and the pressure for me to, so maybe I need a group of students, or I need to come to your classes often to kind of get a little bit
Come.
of that. I don't think I can attend for free though, but yeah. Brilliant, brilliant. Thank you so much in helping me really understand how to handle that low period. And that dark period is like the seeds are germinating, right? They
Yeah.
need to be underground in order for them to be able to nurture themselves from the soil and from questions and from communities to be able to come out and sprout in springtime. But that time is necessary. Whereas I'm almost at the stage, whereas now I'm thinking, if I finish the book, then I will have this anticlimax and it's a demon that I need to deal with. I was like, I need to face it. And it was a big thing for me, at least. But now you're giving me the little connecting points where I can say, okay, this time will take me to the next level.
it
Um,
it is a big thing, and it happens I think to all of us. I don't want
mm,
to exaggerate, but to most of us. But then a lot of times, this is what I'm saying, when it happens is, and we are having conversation, is what I'm always suggesting is think about it, because the
mm,
first thing that will come to mind is something of resistance, no, and all these kind of things, especially when we're trying something new, right? And the new maybe, the for me, the ending is the beginning of something else.
yes.
And again, people are going to say, okay, but you are not satisfied, so you're thinking about something else, and you're going to say, yes, I'm not satisfied, it's fine. So let me think about it. Sometimes saying to other people, or for us to hear this, what did you think about this? It gives us, the space again to explore, to
Mm,
investigate, to spend some time with something, because normal the response that a lot of people have is no, or I don't want to do something. But when you tell people, yeah, think about it, spend some time, and
mm,
when they get this opportunity, then they can think that there is the light at the end of the tunnel, and that
mm.
maybe there is something equally interesting that they can start, or other people that they can work with. So I think it's important to have this in mind.
Yes. Thank you. It's not as scary anymore, which is a beautiful thing. And you say in your book that we need to be able to start the next chapter. We need to get there. And yeah, it has been a major fear of mine for sure. And I now know that I can um, approach it, close the distance of that fear with curiosity within myself. And if you do have any questions, do let us know on the chat now. That's your last few minutes before we close our call today. But I just wanted to say, don't just rely on our highlights from our talk today. This book is unputdownable, actually. And I was saying to Costa before, my husband and I were fighting at some point. It was like, who's going to read it? Because I needed to reread it to create those questions for our session today. But this book contains the 9 essential lessons. And obviously, we're talking to an educator here who is an expert in being able to lay out the path for students and leaders in his capacity as a consultant to be able to follow and tame their curiosity projects and actually yield them to a useful result for society and an impactful project. So don't hesitate to pick up this book and ask Professor Andriopoulos questions even after this call. And yeah, I think what really came up for me was this book is not just about mastering the art of asking questions at the right time, but actually allowing a playful heart as we do that. It doesn't have to be this big thing, this very supercharged innovation needing to come out of this. You really gave us an avenue to handle failure, handle our fears with curiosity, and be able to see this project not as a solitary project, but actually a way to connect with people and be curious about them and be able to open hearts and, bridge cultures and differences and things that are really not talked about a lot, and cross pollinate between industries as well as, different ways of thinking businesses and the challenges that lie ahead of us, in a very complex, fast-paced world. So thank you so much for being with me here today on a Saturday night. Many people could be doing many other things, but they were here to see you, to learn from you. And I definitely feel richer, more enriched in my purposeful projects. And I may share a few more down the line when I get stuck with you to get your insightful help. Thank you so
May
much. Yeah.
may I say, do we have, let's say, half a minute to say a couple of things?
And we do
The,
have a
the,
question, I think.
the first thing is that I wanted to actually say this because I think it's important and it's interesting, is that the first thing is that curiosity is about being humble. The
Mm,
moment that you ask a question, you are showing that you don't know something. So when I hear the word expert, I get a little bit, I don't know, frustrated, because I, we are progressing, but we
mm,
never reach that level. So for me, it's not about expertise, it's about making progress. So
mm,
humility is extremely important. And the
mm,
other thing for me is that curiosity is about listening. So when you are asking a question, then you have to be quiet and listen. And I would like to finish with something that my best friend told me once. He said to me, "You are one of the few academics who is listening," right? And I think this is, of course, this is a joke, right? But this is interesting. That if we would like to make progress, we have to be quiet and listen. And I think it goes with curiosity. Curiosity is about humility, showing that we don't know something, and at the same time, listening to what other people are telling us, actively listening.
mhm. And what a skill it is that we need in the business world for sure. And it would
Yes.
save us a lot of cost, time, money if we were actually listening to our clients, to our
Yeah.
colleagues, to our mistakes when they're shouting. I was like, it's not working. Um, what a powerful finish. And I want to show a few of the comments that came through as you were making those points. Tamer says it is a book that gains value with each subsequent reading, and I've read it twice, and I can say that for sure. I can testify that, making it more than just a one-time read for sure. I keep going back to it, actually. We have a little bit of this now that I've learned to do that. Thank you, Manoj. Um, and we have Farhad as well. Interesting, informative chat. Thank you for joining us. And then Tunk, thanks. Thank you, Prof. It was very interesting. Thank you so much for
Thank you, Christina.
reconnecting all these beautiful, not just concepts, but you have practiced them. And I think for me, that's the most important thing. You have managed to put in this book a really nice methodology, the step-by-step way in which we can meditate through curiosity, meet our demons, meet our fears, and overcome failure, but also connect with others. And they can meet us there in those humble moments where we don't know how to overcome something and we are courageous enough to ask a question, and then we can listen, we can fall back and actually allow another person to show us the way and make different connections. And I definitely will use it in my coaching sessions from now on, because I think curiosity is such a playful way in which we can just desensitize personal matters and actually come to failure and learn from it and let it guide us, really. So thank you so much
It was a
for
pleasure.
for all your wisdom today. And as we said, we may need to do a second episode to yield from what we learned and for your next project as well. Have a
Thank you very
beautiful
much, Christina.
night, and thank you for joining us.